So use a straight line demand curve to show that the price elasticity of demand varies from one point to another on the demand curve. So be sure to indicate the ranges of points of elasticity. So first, what we want to do is that I want to show that on a straight line demand curve, we have different elasticities at different points, okay? At the topmost corner, elasticity is equal to infinity. So E is equal to infinity, which means that the demand here is perfectly elastic. Then in the middle, demand is unitary elastic. So E is equal to 1. So in between the unitary elastic and then the perfectly elastic demand, we have the fairly elastic demand. Then at the down here, demand is perfectly inelastic. So E is equal to 0. Okay, and then in between unitary elastic and perfectly inelastic demand, we have fairly inelastic demand. So this is just the curve, okay? I added the marginal revenue because the next question was talking about where the monopolist will produce. Let's look at the second one. Where on the demand curve in A above will a monopolist operate to maximize profit or minimize losses? Would the monopolist operate in the elastic portion of the demand curve? Why or why not? Okay. So now what you are trying to ask is that on the straight or the linear demand curve, at what points will a monopolist produce? Now we know that a monopolist will produce when marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Okay, marginal revenue must be equal to marginal cost before you can maximize profit. Okay, now marginal cost cannot be negative, which means that before profit can be maximized, marginal revenue cannot be negative. But if you look at this curve, marginal revenue can actually obtain negative values. But then the monopolist will never produce at a point where marginal revenue is negative. He only produces from where marginal revenue is equal to 0 up to where marginal revenue obtains positive values. But if you look at this, when marginal revenue is exactly equal to 0, that is where demand is unitary elastic. So you'll be producing at these levels, okay, at these levels here. And at this point, demand is what? Demand is elastic. From here downwards, we have inelastic demand, okay? And if the firm tries to produce at a quantity here, even here, you see that the marginal revenue will be negative. But the marginal revenue cannot be negative. So the firm will never produce on the portion where marginal revenue is negative. And thereby, we want to say that you never produce at where demand is inelastic. Because whenever the demand is inelastic, marginal revenue is negative for the monopolist. Okay, but marginal revenue cannot be negative. And as a result, he has to be producing at the positive side of marginal revenue, and that is where demand is elastic. So yes, you produce at the elastic portion because that is where he can equate marginal revenue to marginal cost. So he can, maybe you might meet a question why he cannot produce at the inelastic portion, because if he produces the marginal revenue has to be negative, but then optimality requires that marginal cost should be equal to marginal revenue. So the firm will never produce at where demand is inelastic. Where demand is inelastic. I hope you understand that. All right. And then this question. If the law of diminishing marginal returns did not hold, then it will be possible to feed the whole world from just a flower pot. Is this true or false? Now, first, you need to know what diminishing marginal returns is. It just states that when you keep on adding successive units of a variable input to a fixed input, then output will increase, get to a point, and then fall. Or the marginal revenue of the variable input will increase, get to a maximum, and then it falls. So what they are trying to say is that if that thing doesn't work, so if we could indefinitely add variable factors to a fixed input without output falling, then we can just keep on doing that, and then we can keep on producing more and more and more, and then we'll just get to whatever. So you can just pick a very small piece of land, then you add a lot of raw materials, add a lot of people to come and work on that same land, and then you see that we produce billions of bags of, if it's maize or rice, and we can use it to feed the entire world. But it doesn't work like that because of the law of diminishing marginal returns. It gets to a certain point, and then you cannot keep on adding the fixed input. So it is true. If the law is not there, if there's no diminishing marginal return, then of course we can do that. We can just keep on adding the variable inputs to the fixed inputs, and we produce a lot of output, and we can use this output to satisfy the wants of the entire world. Okay, so that's it. I think I did this thing twice. All right, so that's the end to the questions that I said. So please, if you have a question, you can ask me, and then I'll try and give you an explanation. Any question?
Please, I don't understand the task question.
Come again.
The number two, the tax question, I don't understand.
You don't understand the tax question.
Question, yeah. Please, can you go over again?
All right. A minute. Is it this one?
Yes, it's that one.
Okay. Let me just draw a new one. Can you see the white screen?
Yes, I can see.
All right. So now we are drawing our initial demand and then supply curves. Okay.
Okay.
So this will be our equilibrium quantity. Then this will be our equilibrium price. Okay. Now, in case you are asked to find consumer surplus, this side is your consumer surplus. The side below the demand curve, but above price. And the producer surplus too is the part below the price, but then above the supply curve. Okay. So now you know that. Then there's a question that there is a tax, and I'm telling you that this one, you are not even concerned about the amount of tax. All you need to know is that, let me use this to indicate the. So this is the initial consumer and then producer surplus. Okay. So now they are saying that there is a tax okay, a tax of $1 per each output. And I'm telling you that whenever there is a tax, the supply curve will shift to the left, or it shifts upwards. When it shifts upwards, there will be a new equilibrium here. Okay, so this is going to be the new price. This is the price that let me finish drawing this and then all right. Initially, this was the price that they were the market was trading this particular commodity. So let's label this P, okay? But now, because of the tax, this is the price that the consumer is paying. He's paying this price now, okay? Let's call this PC. So this is the new price that the consumer is paying. And this is the price that the producer is going to receive. So whenever there's a tax, the consumer will pay a price higher than the initial one, and the consumer will receive a price lower than the initial one, so that the remainder, the difference between the two is going to the government as the tax. So this is the per unit tax. So now if you want to find the new consumer surplus and then the one for the producer, now the consumer surplus is just this side here. Okay, as we said, is the area below the demand curve but above price, and the wine line is the new price. So this side here is now going to be the new what? The new consumer surplus. Are we together? This side here, okay, is going to be the new consumer surplus. And then if you come to the producer to now, this is the price that the producer is taking. So this is going to be the new producer surplus. The part above the supply line, but then below price. So now this is the new producer surplus. Okay. So if you look at this, initially, this side was part of the producer surplus, right? This side here, this side is a triangle, and then this side here is a rectangle. It was initially part of the consumer, the producer surplus, but now it's no more part. This side is going to the government as tax, and then this side is not going to the government, it's no more going to the producer. So we call this here deadweight loss, and we call this tax revenue. If you go to the consumer too, this side here, this triangle, and then this rectangle were initially part of the consumer surplus, but now they are no longer part. This rectangle is going to the producer, is going to the firm, oh sorry, it's going to the government as tax revenue, okay? This side here is going to the government as tax revenue, and then this side here too is a deadweight loss. So the total deadweight loss here is going to be this side, this yellow two, these two triangles here. And then this side, this, if you add these two rectangles, you get the total tax revenue. And then this is the new consumer surplus, and this is the new producer surplus. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. Any other question? Now I'll be around then. So as you are going through them, in case you get any issue, you just call me, okay?
Thank you. Sir, please, will we get a recorded video?
Yes. Have you subscribed to my YouTube channel? I will send you the link. I will send you the link so that you can watch it. But you try,
Okay.
just try and subscribe to my channel, okay?
Okay.